I don't talk about Erik Larsen all that often on the channel. He's not really relevant in the current comic book picture. He's kind of a jackass. I'm not a big fan of the man. I don't really respect the man, but I do respect the art. So he's a fantastic artist. I think he should probably go back to Marvel or something and stop wasting his time on Savage Dragon. He could be, developing his legacy right now as being a fantastic artist, or at least emboldening it instead of ruining it on these weird fetish porn comics that he's doing. He says a lot of stupid stuff, but this week or this past week, he made some sense. And I was going to cover it. I was like, why cover it now? There's no way that he doesn't backtrack from this. There's no way that he could put this common sense out there. He said what you're not supposed to say out loud. He broke away from the hive. He's no longer part of the Borg, at least for 5 minutes. I was like, there's no way this motherfucker isn't going to have to backtrack all the way back to fucking Image Comics on this thing. And of course he did. So let's go over the Erik Larsen stuff where he said the part out loud that you're not supposed to, that fans aren't wrong and they make a lot of sense. He makes a lot of really good points. There's a ton to this tweet, or at least the original thread. Some of it, including the original tweet, have been deleted. And there's so many responses to it, I can't cover it all. But I'll cover the main points that I thought had some weight to them. I'll give you my thoughts. And then we'll cover again backtrack on this thing as he puts his tail right between his legs and tries to get back with the hive. Sorry, Erik, you're not allowed to speak common sense when you're part of the Borg, all right? So let's get to these tweets that got him a little bit of hot water for making some sense. The original tweet, which has been deleted, says, for some reason, the conventional wisdom at Marvel and DC is to have new characters assume the identities of old characters. But if I'm a fan of Iron Man, I'm absolutely not buying your shitty new Iron Man. I want it to flop so your old Iron Man can return. Oh my goodness. No wonder you got in trouble. You cannot say this stuff out loud, sir. This is what makes fans toxic, that they don't like the massive amount of mantle swaps and try to change out all the heroes. This is why we get called racist. Because we're like, why isn't Tony Stark Iron? There's an Iron Man movie. I just watched the Avengers. Why is Riri Williams Iron Man? Shouldn't she be her own character? Where the fuck did Tony Stark go? And they're like, you, sir, are goddamn racist. Like, you must hate everybody if that's the way you feel. You're like, no, I kind of just like Iron Man, but they'll never let you be that person. And they certainly didn't let Erik Larsen sit there with that. But this is how people feel. Stop changing out the characters. If you want to make a new character, a new hero, and God knows we could use some fresh blood at DC and Marvel as far as the ranks of heroes, give them a unique identity. Stop doing the mantle swaps. Stop swapping in new characters to the old characters. Everyone hates it. And all it does is cause conflict within the comic book community. DC and Marvel know what they're doing. He continued. And if you're going to reinvent a character from the ground up, why not just create a new character? You've done 90% of the work already. Why not give that character a new name and let the old one continue to exist? Now, these are the kind of statements that will get you called a transphobe in today's comic book market. You can't say these things on social media, and he absolutely got his pee-pee slapped for saying this, but it is common sense. You're making a new character. They got a new name. They have some power sets. You hope that they deviate a little bit from the original character anyway. Just make them in their own identity, and that way they can develop their own fan base, which probably will include some of the original fans, because they got a similar power set or whatever. Maybe they're related at some point, but they're not actually replacing them, and stop pissing everybody off. But Erik Larsen, you should not have said this, my friend. You ain't thinking critical. You actually give a damn, and you need to be in the comic book industry to make money. I'm just here observing from the outside. I can get away with this stuff, and I don't mind being called names by these dipshits. You, on the other hand, this ain't going to work out well for you, sir. But he did continue. Creators get back-end participation in new characters, but not in reinvented ones. If Ed Brubaker had made the reveal for the Winter Soldier a red herring and instead revealed he was Fred Johnson, he would have had participation in that character. Instead, he got nothing. Larson continued, the whole mindset of I'm not going to give these companies my great ideas is self-destructive if you give them your great ideas anyway and do it in such a way that you don't get a piece of it. He makes a damn good point there, and that has certainly been brought up many times here on the channel, specifically from Doc. Doc is the naysayer. Maybe he's the Erik Larsen of thinking critical, but he's mentioned multiple times. He shouldn't have made that character Bucky. He should have made Winter Soldier an original character, original creation of Ed Brubaker, and then he would have got the creator points for it. Now, we do know that notoriously Marvel does not give as much money out as DC do for being a creator of something that gets transferred up to the movies and whatnot. But at least you would have got something instead of just like a plane ticket and an invitation to Captain America the Winter Soldier premiere in Hollywood. He would have got some monetary compensation for that, and he could have been called the creator of Winter Soldier. As it is now, sure, like he is the creator of Winter Soldier, but Bucky Barnes is a creation of Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Larson has a point. If you're going to make something cool for DC or Marvel, at least own it. Why make it a spinoff of something that already exists just because it has some inherent name value? What if you make something cool? What if you make the next Deadpool? What if you make the next Spawn or something? You want to have some points in it. Why make the next Spawn, tied to Venom? Michelinie and Todd McFarlane already created that character. Why are you giving them the credit? Get your own credit. If you're going to make stuff original, it's going to be dope. Make it new. It doesn't all have to tie into something that already exists directly. Like, they don't need to be the same characters. Make something cool. When asked to clarify his position by artist and writer Phil Jimenez, Larson stated, "I'm a fan of the person in the costume as much or more as I am the costume itself. If I'm reading Batman and you introduce a new Batman and kill off the old Batman, don't count on me to keep reading Batman." Once you start replacing these characters, what's the point? We've already seen the sales die for Superman Son of Kal-El. We've got I Am Batman coming out from DC Comics where there's a new Batman in New York, Jace Fox. No one cares. No one's talking about it. They're talking about Bruce Wayne, the real Batman. They need to stop replacing these characters and it kills off interest. And a lot of times they do like the dumbest thing. Like we've got this Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness movie, which is probably going to make a ton of money and people are going to be talking about it. And they're going to go to the comic shop potentially and they're going to go see Strange, the comic book that's out right now. And guess who's not on it? Doctor Strange. It's his wife, Clea Strange, with nobody probably that watches the MCU even has heard of. It makes no sense the strategies that DC and Marvel have. You have characters that people love. They don't only love them because of their power sets. They don't only love them because they have a cool logo. They don't only love them because they have a cool outfit and a name. They like the character within the costume as well. Clark Kent is more important than Superman, in my opinion, because of the character and principles and morals of Clark Kent himself. Bruce Wayne is what makes Batman work. You can't be swapping out these characters like that. And certainly Marvel tried it and failed in spectacular fashion like 7 or 8 years ago, yet they continuously keep trying this stuff and people continuously walk away because they don't want to read second-rate, inferior, lame-ass versions of the heroes that they've liked their entire lives. Another Twitter user indicated that they had had enough of derivative Superman characters for representation's sake and suggested creators make something new. This is what Larson had to say. "That's what I prefer, and that's what I do. Why do many black characters in comics inherit their mantles from white characters? Why aren't there more new, iconic black characters? At Marvel and DC, there are like 3. Black Panther, Falcon, and Storm. That's it." Once again, a pretty damn good point. There are actually a ton of great black superheroes at DC and Marvel. And guess what? They're all persona non grata. Luke Cage is awesome. And yes, he did play a pretty big part in that Devil's Reign event, which just ended this week. Guess what's not coming out within the next month? The Luke Cage book that's spinning out of that. Luke Cage should be a big deal. He's been in the streaming show. He's the original black superhero at Marvel Comics as far as leading its own title. Obviously, Black Panther came in first, but he should be a big deal. They treat him like he's nothing. He's an afterthought. He shows up in the event. Normally, he's up in the top corner, and he never does anything. There are so many really cool black characters at Marvel and DC. They don't use any of them. Why don't we get more Monica Rambeau? That's another great character they just thrown to the wayside to make way for Carol Danvers and another character to take over a mantle swap. How many times do we have to give over the Captain Marvel mantle? Marvel died was a big deal. He's one of the few characters that ever died in a comic book that didn't come back. Even Gwen Stacy, although in the 616 she's still dead, we've got derivatives of her all over the place. Marvel himself is the only one that's still dead. Monica Rambeau was a pretty good successor. They probably should have given her own name, but she had a good personality. People like that character, yet they don't do anything with it. There are so many characters like that are representative of different demographics other than white people and straight white people, because apparently we're the problem now. It isn't my fault that DC and Marvel refuse to highlight any of them. It's not my fault that the only way a character can be important at Marvel and DC is if you decide the black character is Superman now. That's their problem. That's their narrative. And I disagree with it. And I know a ton of my viewers that are black, brown, and all that good stuff. They agree with that. They don't want to see the characters they love to inherit mantles from white characters. They want them to be their own standalone heroes and be who they are. If you need a black Superman, Icon is sitting right there waiting to be used. That's a really cool, different version of a Superman type character. They're not going to make a movie with that character. He's going to get a 6-issue miniseries, and then they're going to forget about him for 30 more fucking years. Because that's what DC and Marvel do. This is a DC and Marvel problem. This isn't a you and I problem. And it's not an Erik Larsen problem, apparently, because he gets it. Now, he did say all this stuff, which all makes sense, but we know you can't say this stuff out loud unless you want to be called an ist or something. And apparently he did get called some things, so he had to backtrack. I thought this was funny. I knew it was coming. I was like, I'm not covering this damn thing until Erik Larsen puts his tail between his legs and recants at least most of it. And he did the best he could with what he had. This is what he had to say so he could get himself out of some hot water. The original Sid at Marvel and DC was making every character straight and white. Now that there's a huge push for representation, they've been caught with their pants down. But how can you fix the problem? With the movies, it's easy. Just cast your film with a diverse group and ignore the comics and the fans on Twitter because nobody cares. In the comics, that's more difficult because you can't just swap the races of existing characters. The ideal solution would be to create a whole mess of new characters, which are diverse, and then use those characters in comics and movies. But creators don't want to give Marvel and DC their great ideas, so that's not going to work. Instead, they'll do things like have characters inherit the role from a white character, which pisses off the fans of the original character. It always seems like a temporary change. Inevitably, the original character will return, and that will leave their replacement out in the cold. If they're savvy, they can transition their replacement characters into a new role, but largely it's pretty messy and leaves readers on all sides pissed off. So the original Sid of comic books is, I guess, a bunch of Jewish writers in the early days of comics that they made all the characters straight and white, although that was overwhelming the population of America and the people they were trying to entertain. But I thought it was funny. He had to explain himself to where he'd get out of it, although he did reiterate his points. I'll give him that. He somewhat stood up to what was likely a very severe tongue lashing behind the scenes, as they said, you better delete that tweet, and it got deleted. And you better say something better than what you really said. The original Sid is Jack Kirby and Stan Lee and Bill Finger and Bob Kane and Siegel and Schuster. I just don't think is the best way to put it. Perhaps times have changed, and the industry needs to change with it and make new original characters, kind of like what you said. But I'm not going to sit there and bash the originators of the comic industry who were all standing on the shoulders of these giants of the industry who are no longer with us, that were creating comic books and creating an entertainment industry that we all love so much and have been here for years and years. They created comic books for their times. Those characters and legacies have stood the test of time. They're still here with us. It's on the creators today. If you want to show something more diverse, if you want more representation, you need to go out there and create it. And you need to do it well to where people don't just turn away and they accept the characters instead of just going back to the stuff that they've been reading. That's on the creators. That's not on us. I don't have to force myself to like something just because it's representation. I'm only going to like comic books that are good. And I don't care what the color of the character is. I don't care what the sexuality of the character is. I don't care what the gender of the character is. If they are good, I will like them and I will continue reading. And if they are not, I will summarily reject them no matter what people say to me. And it sounds like deep down, Erik Larsen is of the same mind. I do think this is funny because the last time I mentioned him on the channel, he was talking about we needed to change Punisher wholesale and make the character gay to take back the logo. I think it's weird to have these two different takes like a month apart, but if you haven't seen that one, the last time Erik Larsen really put his foot in his mouth, definitely check it out. The guy's a moron. Apparently sometimes he makes some sense, but definitely check this out. That's more reflective of who Erik Larsen really is. Stupid.